Okay, third years, Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Wajia Nurlain from the Department of Family Medicine. And today again, you will be doing an examination, the respiratory system examination. Now, those of you who attended on Monday, we did general physical examinations. We started the examination from there. So as a continuation, we will be doing the respiratory system examination today. Okay. This is just a systemic chart to make you clear how to start the examination and what parts of examination are included in the systemic examination, the respiratory system examination. Certain things from general physical examination like hands, pulse, blood pressure, your jugular venous pressure, and your face is also included as a part of examination. But basically, we will be covering the systemic examination. As at your level, it will be more than enough that you know the examination, how to perform the systemic examination. The examination sequence is in any examination include, you have to introduce yourself to the patient, always obtain a consent, either a verbal or written consent. The things that the parts, the areas which are included in this examination, you have to examine the hands of the patient for any peripheral cyanosis or clubbing, tar stains, face for plethora, central cyanosis, then lymph nodes, especially the cervical lymph nodes, jugular venous pressure, skin for any obvious lesions, veins, scars, and the respiratory system itself, inspection, palpation, percussion, and auscultation. If you have any questions, you can write it on the chat so we can answer them as the lecture is going on. Now I will be playing a video showing you the basic techniques of the examination, and then we will discuss at the end these techniques one by one.
First step in any examination is proper exposure. So for the respiratory system, it is essential that ideally the patient's shirt should, once the patient gives consent, the next step is appropriate exposure. For the respiratory system, it is essential that the patient's shirt and any undergarment should be off. However, social values and cultural norms should be kept in mind. Therefore, specifically with female patients, ensure that there is privacy. The exposure should be such that the anterior, lateral and the posterior sides of the chest should be ideally exposed along with exposure of the neck. Then inspect the patient from the right side, looking at the chest, such that you examine the anterior, lateral and the posterior aspects. The relationship of the anterior-posterior diameter to the lateral diameter should also be done in the inspection, along with observing for any scars of previous surgery, any swellings, any markings or spots on the skin. Then the next step is palpation. Before starting palpation, it is essential to ask the patient if he has pain at any site. That site is to be examined in the end. For palpation, ask the patient to look straight ahead so that the trachea can be observed appropriately. Then, gently place the tip of the right index finger into the suprasternal notch and palpate the trachea, first with one finger. In order to make sure whether the trachea is central, the three-finger method of palpation is also appropriate. By dipping your fingers on either side of the trachea. The next step is chest expansion. To assess expansion of the chest, place your hand firmly on the chest wall. Both hands should be placed in such a way that the fingers lie in the intercostal spaces. On either side. The thumbs should be in the midline, just touching, but slightly away from the chest wall. They should almost meet in the midline. Next, ask the patient to take a deep breath. In an ideal chest expansion, the thumbs should move symmetrically away at least 5 centimeters. Any asymmetry, if present, will be observed. This method is done to check for chest expansion of the lower lobe. In order to check for expansion of the upper lobe, move to the posterior aspect of the patient. The procedure will be the same. Placing both hands on the chest wall. The procedure is such that for the upper lobes, just inspect closely, asking the patient to take deep breaths and noting any asymmetry that may be present. This completes our palpation. The next step is percussion. The procedure of percussion is such that you have to place the palm of your left hand on the chest with the fingers slightly separated. The fingers should be placed in such a way that the intercostal space which is to be percussed should be underneath the middle finger of the left hand. Press the middle finger of your left hand firmly against the chest, aligning it to the underlying intercostal area. Strike the center of the middle phalanx of your left middle finger with the tip of your right middle finger, using a swinging movement. Please make sure that the movement is at the wrist and not at the forearm. Next, remove the percussing finger quickly so that the note that is generated will not be dampened. As you can see, this is how you percuss the patient. Percuss the lung apex by placing the palmar surface of the left middle finger across the anterior border of the trapezius muscle, overlapping the supraclavicular fossa and percussing downwards. Percuss the clavicle directly over the medial third. For percussion of the clavicle, you do not need to place your left hand. Ask the patient to let you know if he has any pain or discomfort. एक सेकेंड पॉज कर सकते हैं. The clavicle is percussed directly over the medial third. The rest of the percussion has to follow a step-ladder pattern, making sure that all sides of the chest are equally covered. As you move down, you should also move a little to the lateral side. Ask the patient to fold their hands such that they place their hands over the opposite shoulders. This will fully expose the lateral aspects of the chest. Then move posteriorly. Make sure that you do not percuss near the midline. When the patient has his arms folded, it ensures that the scapula moves out of the range of percussion. Percuss each side alternately and compare the note, again moving in a step-ladder pattern. The typical percussion notes that are to be found are resonant over a normal lung, hyperresonant in case of air trapping, for example in a pneumothorax, dull in conditions such as pulmonary consolidation, collapse, and severe pulmonary fibrosis. Stony dull, which would be found particularly over fluid, such as a pleural effusion or a hemothorax. The next step is to auscultate the patient. For every area that is auscultated, assess the quality and the amplitude of the breath sounds, as well as the type of breath sounds, noting any gap between the inspiration and the expiration, and any added sounds. Avoid auscultating within 3 centimeters of the midline anteriorly, as this may transmit sounds directly from the trachea or the main bronchi. As you move down, also move laterally. Again, ask the patient to fold his arms such that the lateral aspects of the chest are exposed, and auscultate up to the 8th rib. Posteriorly, the entire chest will be auscultated down to the level of the 11th rib. Certain factors may mask the breath sounds or cause diminishing of the breath sounds, such as obesity or the patient having a thick chest wall. However, make sure that you do not confuse it with conditions such as a pleural effusion or a pneumothorax. Once the auscultation and examination is completed, kindly thank the patient and recover him. Vocal resonance.
Okay, so I hope you were able to hear the audio this time also. We have completed a visual examination of video of the normal techniques, how to perform them, and what to do in inspection, palpation, percussion, and auscultation. So respiratory examination, you have to know what is the normal respiratory rate of an adult patient. Usually it is between 12 to 16 breaths per minute, and you calculate it for 1 whole minute. When it is more than 25, the rate is increased. It can be increased in certain conditions. The common ones are discussed here, like fever, acute exacerbation of asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or pneumonia. Certain conditions can also cause the respiratory rate to reduce, like bradypnea is when the rate is less than 10 per minute. The common causes are opioid toxicity, hypercapnia, which is carbon dioxide retention, can decrease the brainstem, and hypothyroidism or raised intracranial pressure can also lead to reduced breath rate, respiratory rate. Okay, then what are the breathing patterns that you have to observe? Normally, the breathing patterns are that in females, the respiration is thoraco-abdominal, and in males, the respiratory pattern is abdominothoracic respiration. You have to observe these patterns, the difference between thoraco-abdominal and abdominothoracic in patients when you start your clinical postings. There are certain breathing patterns which you see in hospitalized patients or patients with left ventricular failure, increased intracranial pressure, or brainstem lesions, which represents Sheen-Stokes breathing, or Kussmaul breathing in cases of ketoacidosis or renal failure patients. Basically, when the patient is there with metabolic acidosis, breathing patterns are different. These are the two common types of respiratory patterns, breathing patterns, which you can observe in inpatients. Shape of the chest, we will start with inspection. You also look for the shape of the chest. Normal shape of a chest of an adult is where the anterior posterior diameter is less than the transverse diameter. Barrel chests occur when both the diameters are equal, that the AP diameter, the anterior posterior diameter, is equal to the transverse diameter. It occurs because of trapping of the air inside the lungs, such as in emphysema. Pectus excavatum is another common chest which you can see in your clinical practice. It's also known as funnel chest. Normally, funnel chest is when there's a localized depression at the lower end of the sternum, and usually it is a developmental anomaly. Pigeon chest, pectus carinatum, the prominence of sternum and costal cartilages occur. You can see it in cases of children which have severe vitamin D deficiency, known as rickets, or in case of respiratory diseases like chronic respiratory diseases, childhood asthma. The children who develop asthma in early childhood also develop pigeon chest. Okay. Then when you come on your breath sounds, when you're listening to them, you're auscultating your breath sounds. We have to look for these four things when you're observing the breath sounds: the intensity of the breath sound, its duration, the character, and the interval between the two breath sounds, inspiration and expiratory sounds. So for intensity, what is the normal intensity of breath sounds? No one can teach you this because you have to, develop your own skill to differentiate between a normal intensity of a breath sound or decreased intensity of a breath sound. As in also in the video, they told you that intensity can be decreased in case of a very obese patient or thick chest wall. But what is a normal intensity and what is a decreased intensity of a breath sound, you have to make out by repeatedly auscultating different patients. Certain causes of decreased breath sounds in case of pleural effusion, when there's fluid in the pleural cavity, pneumothorax, when there's air inside, excessive air inside, they're trapped inside the air, a collapse with obstructive bronchus, thickened pleura, or emphysema can all cause decreased intensity of breath sounds. When we talk about the character of breath sounds, so normally the breathing is vesicular breathing. When we auscultate a patient who is breathing normally, we write it's a normal vesicular breathing, NVB. Vesicular breathing is a type of pattern, a breathing pattern in which inspiration is prolonged than expiration, and there is no gap between the inspiration and expiration. And the quality, you can say it's a sort of rustling quality, vesicular breathing. The other, which is a bronchial breathing sound has a very definite gap between the inspiration and expiration, and the character is blowing. There's a definite pause, and the inspiration and expiration are equal. In vesicular, inspiration is prolonged, but in bronchial breathing, both the inspiration and expiration becomes equal. Okay, bronchial breathing you can hear in case of disease lung, like in the presence of a consolidation, cavitation, or collapse. Okay. In the video again, we showed you how to palpate for trachea. So there are certain conditions which can either pull the trachea towards the disease side or they push the trachea towards the healthy side. The most common causes which we can see I've shown and I've tried to explain them with the help of these extra pictures. Like if there's a lung collapse, it will pull the trachea towards the side where the lung collapse has taken place. And in case of lung fibrosis, again, the trachea is pulled toward the disease side. But if there is air or there is fluid inside the diseased lung, the trachea will be pushed towards the healthy side. Again, we look for chest expansion. Normally, they told you that it should be more than 5 centimeter, but if it is reduced, then it can be a cause of emphysema, any bronchial asthma. Diffuse pulmonary fibrosis can cause reduced chest expansion, and ankylosing spondylitis due to the merging of the vertebral bodies can cause reduced chest expansion. Okay. One thing we missed in this video was how to look for vocal or tactile primitus. Vocal and tactile primitus, we look on the palpation actually. You have to put the lateral side of your hand on the sides we have to percuss. These are the sides we need to percuss or auscultate. These are the common usual sides. which we focus and auscultate during the respiratory examination. The arrows are showing the step ladder pattern. So always in a respiratory examination, we perform the examination in a step ladder pattern. And these are the common points we have to auscultate. So while we are doing the vocal or tactile fremitus, we place the lateral border of our hand on these points and we ask the patient to repeat 99, 111, or in case in our setting, we ask the patient to say teen, teen, teen because of the language we use here. It should be any sound which can resonate. Normal lung sound, the character we just discussed, is the resonant sound. Normally, the area over the lungs is resonant. We need to feel the resonance on the lateral border of our hand. When we place our hands, the lateral border on the hands on these areas, and we ask the patient to repeat 99 or 111 or teen, 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 we can actually feel the resonance on the lateral border of our hand, which is normal tactile fremitus. But sometimes, like in cases of consolidation or cavitation or a collapse with a patent bronchus, tactile fremitus is increased. While in case of fluid or air like pleural effusion or pneumothorax or a collapse with an obstructive bronchus, tactile fremitus is decreased. Similarly, vocal resonance or tactile resonance is the same, is performed like similarly as the tactile fremitus, but we have to use a stethoscope instead of our hands. So when we are using a stethoscope and asking the patient to say or repeat 99 or 111, this is vocal resonance. The causes of increased vocal resonance and decreased vocal resonance is exactly the same as the increase and decreased vocal fremitus. The only difference is the fremitus is done on palpation with our hands, the lateral border of our hands, and resonance is done by using a stethoscope. Okay. So percussion note, we discussed in the video also, but for your ease and for your understanding, I have made a slide again. Normal lung is resonant. We cannot just make you hear these sounds. So what you can do at this level is, considering the circumstances also, you can ask any volunteer at your home and repeat these examinations on a normal individual. The more examinations you do over a normal person, the more you will be used to hear the normal sounds. What is the normal vesicular breathing? What is the resonant normal lung resonant sound, percussion note? So you can make out when you start picking up on the disease patterns in the hospital setting when you come back for your clinical rotations. So normally the lung is resonant. But in case of the excessive trapping of air, which is in case of pneumothorax, it becomes hyperresonant. It becomes a dull percussion note if there is a consolidation or a collapse or severe pulmonary fibrosis. And it becomes a stony dull if there is fluid inside it. So pleural effusion or hemothorax. Hemothorax means there's blood inside your cavity. So if it's a fusion or a pneumothorax, the percussion note will be stony dull. Okay, when we are talking about the sounds, the normal vesicular breathing and bronchial breathing and all these sounds, there are certain added lung sounds which talk about that there's a wheezing sound, there's a stridor, this is a rhonchi or crackles. So what are these? So basically, when we talk about the crackles, we start with the crackles. Crackles is a gurgling sound. Okay, like if you have ever tried hearing a sound which comes out when you blow air in any fluid, the gurgling sound that comes are the crackles. Crackles can be of two types. It can be coarse crackles or it can be fine crackles. The causes are different, obviously. So fine crackles can be caused by pulmonary edema or pulmonary fibrosis. These two are the most common causes which causes fine crackles in your lungs. Bronchiolitis, lung abscess, bronchiectasis, they can also cause crackles, but these are coarse crackles. Crackles are basically low-pitched, bubbling, gurgling sounds. Okay, then what is a rhonchi? So a rhonchi is basically a continuous musical whistling sound, which is produced by the passage of air through narrowed airways. It can occur in both inspiration, during inspiration and expiration, and it is caused by secretions. Sometimes when a patient with productive cough comes to you, and it can be any usual viral upper respiratory tract infection, and he has cough, and you can hear rhonchi on auscultation, whistling sound on auscultation, which is occurring in both the phases of inspiration and expiration. You ask the patient to cough, the airway is cleared, the voice is, it disappears. The rhonchi will disappear. So it can be, but it is a continuous whistling sound. It's just it can occur in cases of bronchial asthma. It can occur in cases of chronic or acute bronchitis. It can occur in cases of emphysema. Wheeze is again a musical sound, but wheeze sometimes can be heard without a stethoscope. Wheeze you can actually hear on inspection when you're not using anything to hear. No, you're not using any stethoscope to hear. Wheeze can be heard at that. This is also again a musical whistling sound. It is again present in both the phases of inspiration and expiration, which is high pitched, continuous. And normally the wheeze will not go away when you ask the patient to cough. It's because of the narrowing of the airways. It's a characteristic feature if you found a wheeze in a patient, a characteristic sign of asthma or COPD in a patient. The stridor is again a sound resembling a rhonchi, which is produced by partial obstruction of larynx. So basically, a stridor is at the upper bronchial level due to an obstruction in the upper airway. It can be partial obstruction, it can be complete obstruction. And if this sound, stridor, is more on inspiration, when the air is trying to go inside due to partial obstruction, the sound is produced, which is known as stridor. Stridor again has to be heard without a stethoscope. You can hear it actually. Pleural rub, a superficial, scratchy, rough sound, like rubbing. It is because of the rubbing of the inflamed pleural surfaces. There are two layers of pleura, so they rub against each other, producing a superficial, scratchy, rough sound, like in cases of pleural effusion, pleuritis, and it remains unchanged on coughing. If you ask the patient to cough, it will not go away like the rhonchi which went away when we ask the patient to cough. So we have tried to cover the main points in the examination. Main breath sounds pattern, the breathing patterns, the main pathologies which can cause these findings in a patient. I again suggest that you should try and practice this at home. Ask a volunteer from your home and practice these examinations. Practice is the key to it. You will not be able to know what is a normal vesicular breathing or what is a wheeze or a stridor unless you have heard a normal vesicular breathing. You will be unable to tell a bronchial breathing from normal vesicular breathing unless and until you know perfectly what a normal vesicular breathing is. Similarly, you cannot just start measuring the chest expansion in a patient if you don't know what a normal chest expansion is. What should the where should your thumb be placed in case of a normal chest expansion? So practice on a normal individual, practice on a normal volunteer for now. So when you come back for your clinical rotations and you start doing these on your patients, so you know and you start picking on the findings. So thank you, and if there are any questions, you can write in the chat box, I think. Are there any questions? Okay. There's a question that how do you measure JVP? I I didn't actually show here how to measure jugular venous pressure here because actually it's a part of a cardiovascular examination. But I just mentioned here that in some cases, respiratory causes can also lead to increased JVP. So I can tell you here, but it will be a very theoretical way of telling it. For JVP, the patient should be supine at an angle of 45 degrees. And then jugular venous, you should actually know where the position of a jugular vein is. So it's anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid muscle in the neck. The patient should be 45 degrees supine. And what you need is basically you need two scales to measure it or two pencils to measure your JVP. I think you should wait for the cardiovascular examination. You go back for a video of it because it will be very difficult to explain JVP, how to measure it theoretically like this in a lecture. But it is a part of a cardiovascular examination, so in detail it is covered in that examination. Respiratory I just mentioned because in some cases of respiratory you need to measure a JVP. So when you will be doing your cardiovascular, it will be covered there. Okay, anything more? Somebody wrote slides. What do you want us to do?
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
मैडम लेक्चर आपका एंड हो गया?
जी, लेक्चर मेरा एंड हो गया। अच्छा, मुझे एक बच्चे ये पूछ रहे हैं कि जो हम प्रेजेंटेशन इनको दिखा रहे हैं वो हम उनको सेंड कर सकते हैं, तो उसका कोई तरीका?
मैडम ये मैडम जोरा से बात करें, उनको बोले एक बार प्रिंसिपल ऑफिस में आ जाएं।
ठीक है,
प्रिंसिपल ऑफिस में कंफर्म कर लें। ठीक है,
ठीक है। अच्छा, यू कैन कंफर्म दिस फ्रॉम द प्रिंसिपल ऑफिस। ये स्लाइड्स की बात मेरी हुई है, तो यू कैन कंफर्म दिस फ्रॉम द प्रिंसिपल ऑफिस। वी विल ईमेल इट टू द प्रिंसिपल ऑफिस एंड यू कैन गेट इट फ्रॉम देयर, these presentations if you wanted. ठीक है जी, थैंक यू। देन वी
थैंक यू सो मच।
थैंक यू।